Hey, Vaughn.
Hey Kim, how are you?
I am well, and you?
I'm well also, thank you.
Post combine.
Yeah.
So many. So before we get to it, our fundamentals day is gonna be about behind the scenes in the combine. But I'm just gonna ask you. I was not super enthused by the combine this year.
No?
No, I mean, there were some that were super exciting to watch. In fact, I thought the running backs
Mhm.
this year were some of the most exciting to watch, and then some of the defensive play. Um, but I don't know. Was it me? What did you think?
I'm just always fascinated by the big guys and just the
Yeah.
whole idea of bigger, faster, stronger, and at what point are we not going to be able to keep pushing the limits of a human body, right? And just seeing those big guys move with the speed they move, jump with the explosiveness they jump with. It's just always fascinating to me. And so I'm always intrigued, So it's kind of the same thing as last year for me, like no different. I love seeing the big guys move so well.
I get that's true. I do. I really probably enjoy the drills a little bit more than I like the 40. But
Hmm.
that's always like you turn it on and that's always what you see is the 40.
Right.
But my favorite part is I think I told you before when they at the end and they all come together as a group and they're all happy and they're probably so glad it's over and then they all do these backflips. Like what's with the deal with the backflips?
Well,
There's at least one guy who does a backflip in every group. At least one.
right, trying to show how athletic he is, right?
Yeah. And his agent is probably going, no, don't do it. In fact, the running back group, there were three, or the wide receivers. One group, there were three.
Right, right.
But anyway, I still would love to go one day. I think it would be super fun to see in person. And so let's get to the fundamentals, and you're gonna talk us through a little bit about what it's like behind the scenes at the combine.
Yes. And just quickly to recap, the combine is where the top draft eligible college players go to be evaluated. As we just talked about, athletic drills, their speed, their height, their weight, how much weight they can bench press, 225 for a certain number of times, broken down by position. And so all the coaches obviously show up, medical exams. But the other part that's equally important to the combine week is what goes on behind the scenes. And I think I briefly mentioned it last week, but all the NFL power brokers show up from ownership to the executives, GMs, all of the coaches, all of the agents. And so when they're in that environment, there's a ton of downtime. And so what do? They talk, they run things by each other. And so I just thought I'd just go through kind of some of the things that come out of that. And so to yeah,
Before you start though, let me ask you something that I just learned about, and I
yeah,
want to know if you heard about this. Speaking of downtime, this
yes.
was at the Starbucks in Indianapolis near the combine. Apparently, Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz got into a big to do.
Oh, is that right? I didn't hear that. No.
Okay, I got to research that. I just thought, I'm like, Ian Rappaport? He seems so nice.
Right. Well,
Okay, so you haven't heard about that. Okay.
but you never know because especially those guys who are in the business of information and they have so many sources and then you never know when issues are going to crop up because maybe hey they feel ownership over hey this is my guy where I get my information and or maybe you contradicted something I put out there right so you never know where these little tiffs can come up so yeah that's
Well,
interesting.
in my mind, I was just envisioning this like, no, it's, like this little,
Right, that's about what it was.
not like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I'm gonna see if I can do some investigative journalism and find out what happened there.
Okay.
So, okay, on to you.
So, things that get discussed behind and it's so imagine everyone's there and you have this downtime. You're walking through the halls of the stadium, and you're an agent perhaps, and you represent a client, and you see ownership or the GM of that team, and so you get ear to you get a lot of time to kind of discuss and talk through perhaps what a deal could look like. And hey, you're coming up in your guys coming up in free agency. Would there be any interest? And now the official negotiating period doesn't open until the 10th of March. However, with anything, everything gets back channeled, right? And this is where all that stuff happens. So some of the things that happened this week that probably maybe not even initiated, but certainly were discussed at the combine, the trade of Debo Samuels. He kind
Yeah.
of was not disgruntled, but the two sides, he and the 49ers, weren't seeing eye to eye. He's an explosive receiver, kind of a do it all player, but just for whatever reason, the relationship seemed to sour. And this week, he gets traded to the Washington Commanders, but I'm positive that discussions about that between the two sides were taking place at the combine between his agent and the 49ers. Hey, can I go out and seek a deal even though I'm under contract? Sure. He goes, talks to the Commanders, and then the Commanders they get together with the 49ers. So that's something. Joe Tooney, who is an all-pro guard for the Chiefs, who unfortunately for him, he had to play left tackle in the Super Bowl due to injuries, but a great football player. He gets traded this week to the Chicago Bears, who are trying to shore up their offensive line to protect Caleb Williams. Well, I'm positive, especially because of the timing, that deal was discussed at the combine. So these are some of the things that this could get discussed. Something else that will be discussed is Myles Garrett weeks ago. Hey, I want to be traded. I don't see a future for me in Cleveland with another rebuild. I don't want to go through that. So teams know, hey, there's his agent. Go talk to him. Hey, would there be any interest in him coming here? Hey, his agent to the teams. What would a trade look like? What would it take? He goes talks to the Cleveland Browns. What are you guys looking for that I can get my client moved? What would you be willing to take, a first rounder and a second rounder? No. We want 2 first rounders, right? So all these things are discussed there. Some other things that
Wait, let me ask you. Can I ask a question about that, Vaughn? Vaughn, hold on. So let's just say Myles Garrett's agent. So when he goes to approach like the Browns,
yes.
I mean, does he go to like the coach? Does he go to the GM? Like how easy is it for an agent at the combine to go have that kind of conversation? I mean, is it awkward? Is it expected? Like, I mean, I'm under the impression the Browns they keep saying they don't want to trade Myles Garrett, but is that kind of a smokescreen? How does it work?
I think that's what you say because you don't want to look like you're giving up such a remarkable player. Because are we giving up on the season already? But they know they're not going to win in the next couple of years, especially with the Deshaun Watson contract.
Yeah.
So that's the lip service you have to give. But of course, you're going to be open to, because if someone offers you a package that's just, hey, 2 firsts and a second, then you have to look at that deal and say, hey, we at least have to be open to examining how would this help improve our football team. And for the teams know who the agents are, right? Especially for their major players like a Myles Garrett. And so he goes and he talks to the GM or part of that GM group, right? The GM probably isn't, in most cases, directly negotiating the numbers. I mean, he helps set the numbers, but there's a capologist, a cap guy who knows how all these things work together. And hey, what do we need to get value back for Myles Garrett? So yeah, it's not a hard conversation, and because everyone shows up this week looking to talk about these things. Hey, either how can we make Myles happy, or hey, well, look, we want to help Myles get moved on because we think we can get back. And so that's how the negotiations go, right?
So does it happen in the stadium, like in the boxes? You do see guys like chatting away in the box, or is it at dinner? Is it in the hotel? Is it at Starbucks where all the fights are going down?
It happens at Starbucks. It happens in the stadium. It happens at dinner. It happens at the bar, the after hours bars that stay open later than normal. It happens just throughout the whole week, wherever people, hey, let's meet here, or just bodies cross each other and hey, let me bend your ear about this, right? And sometimes another thing that happens is disinformation as in regards to the draft. Hey, we're interested in this guy because you're trying to send a smoke screen because here's your real, your real plan, but you have a value like an Ian Rappaport and you float him a little something. You're not outright lying, but you're trying to send a little smoke screen because you don't want people to know you're trying to move up to get this particular player at this particular spot in the draft. So that's another thing that happens, because
Mm.
anything you hear during the combine, you kind of have to take with a grain of salt because our team's playing the game of disinformation, or are they being transparent? And NFL teams are rarely just, if ever, just completely 100% transparent in terms of what they're doing. Um,
Right.
but another thing that happened, so Saquon Barkley has this historical season for Philly, gets a contract extension after just signing last year, but they see the value to him. He's an integral part of moving on and trying to repeat, and so he gets a contract extension of 2 years at about 20 million per year. The first running back to hit that number. That's discussed at the combine. Like, hey, this is what we're thinking. They go to they see his agent. Hey, this is what we're thinking. We want to extend him. He's such a huge part of our team going forward. What's the number we think is going to get this done? And so they discussed that at the combine. Zach Vaughn, the middle linebacker for Philly, who was first team All Pro this year, weren't expecting it. I don't think. I think they thought he'd be good, but not first team All Pro good. He
Hmm.
contract extension, 3 years, 50 million, and that again probably in the works, but still, I'm sure part of it was still discussed at the combine. So
Right.
some other things that kind of happened this week that aren't necessarily combine related, more so to do with the league year about to start. Joey Bosa was released by the Chargers, right? Big
Saw
name,
that. That's big.
kind of has an injury bug right now. And typically, when you get up in years like Joey, you don't get hurt less. You can probably start to get hurt more, which is part of the calculation. Not what you did for us, what can you do for us going forward? And I'm sure the timing is he probably had a roster bonus coming up due, meaning that if he's on the roster on a certain date, he's owed a certain amount of money. And so they had to cut him before that date, or else they'd be on the line for that bonus. So now he'll be in the free agent pool. Hopefully for him and the team that signs him, he can regain his old form. But again, once you start getting the injury bug, it's unfortunately feels like there's momentum and it's difficult to kind of stop that. But wish him all the luck. Another guy who got cut, Devontae Adams. Um, I think some people might debate if he's still a number one or just like a very solid number two. Regardless, he's a quality receiver, so I'm sure he'll have a lot
Hmm.
of interest, right? And that
Yeah.
was clearly he was brought in because he has such a connection with Aaron Rodgers, and that didn't work out. I didn't see if they let him go yet, but the plan is to let Aaron Rodgers go, so I'm sure that's part of that making that move, right?
Yeah. So back to the combine and some of the conversation, because there was so much made of what happened with Shador Sanders. Like, all of a sudden, did you hear this? There was all this bad press about him, how he was arrogant at the
Yeah.
combine, and I mean, what was that all about?
Again,
That
some of that might be misinformation. You put it out there because you want teams to back off so you can make the move. And
right,
look, I've talked about the fact that they all have egos. I'm not quite sure how that manifests with Shador. I don't know the kid. He's got to be confident to play that position at the high level
sure,
he plays it at.
sure,
So one man's interpretation of arrogance is just another guy's interpretation of confidence. So you never know. And again, what have I always said? As a player, all I need is one team to like me, to want me
right,
on their squad, and I'll make it work. So I did see that. I took it kind of with a grain of salt, especially considering when it's coming out, right? Because trust me,
yeah,
teams don't look at it as besmirching the young man's character. They look at it, hey, we want that guy. We don't want everyone else to want him. We'll put this, he's arrogant, yada, yada, yada. And then teams kind of back off, and then you can get him when you, because sometimes it's not just about getting the guy you want. Sometimes it's about getting the guy you want where you want him in the draft, right? Do we need to spend first round capital to get him, or can we wait till the second round? Well, if he's highly valued, highly coveted, well, you got to pull the trigger when you can. But if people are starting to back off of him, then perhaps you can take that chance and maybe we'll wait until the second round. Those type of games are being played all the time, right?
That's like very high school. That's like, I mean, I'm assuming that Shador, because he is Dion's son, I'm sure Dion has told him everything that's going to happen. And I'm assuming he's got enough confidence in himself and knowledge of who he is as an individual that he won't let that affect him. But that's kind of mean girls, you
Well,
know?
well, for some people who don't remember or don't know, famously when Dion was coming out in the draft, I believe the Giants wanted to interview him, and he asked them, "Well, when do you pick?" And I think they picked around eighth or ninth. And he said, "Well, no, I'm not going to interview with you. I'm not going to be around long enough for you to draft me."
Which sounds about right for Dion.
Right. And he was right. He went fifth. So look, they all have egos. I think he's everything I see. He's a good kid, and people are gonna debate, where they come down on Dion. A lot of it probably has to do with that too. How do they feel
Right.
about Dion, and then how does
Yeah.
that interpret how they feel about the kid, right? So, he'll be fine. I'm sure he'll still, now I know there's debate now of just despite that talk, just in terms of arm strength, how he sees the field, that type of thing that they're talking about. Well, maybe he's not a top 10 pick. But look, if you go in the first round, I think it's an incredible accomplishment. You got to be proud of that either way.
Absolutely.
Um,
Anyone who plays in the NFL has to be proud
yeah,
of that. My
yeah.
goodness.
One other thing that happened this week with a lot of different guys is renegotiating their contracts. So CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott signed huge deals last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think Dak Prescott's the quarterback for Dallas. He was going to take up 90 million of the cap for this year for the Cowboys. Well, they had to renegotiate his contract, so they moved 45 million of his salary in the fall to a signing bonus, and the benefit for the team is it freed up $35 million in the cap. The benefit to the player is instead of having to wait until the fall to get that money, he gets it now. And considering the time value of money today is worth more than it is tomorrow. It's win-win, right? And so he helps the team.
Right.
They give him money now, and then hopefully they can go out and sign a few players. And CeeDee
Well,
Lamb.
there's already drama. There's already drama around that
Oh, is there
because
really?
because
Of
I was
course.
listening to Colin Cowherd on my way home today, and I don't know if it was the coach or someone from the team came out and said, "We're really excited about the free agency market. We just restructured this contract, blah, blah, blah. We have money, blah, blah, blah. We're going to look for some free agent help." Then Jerry comes back and says, "I don't know where y'all got the idea that I'm going to be looking at some free agents because we are solid at every position." That's probably not a very good Jerry Jones accent. Um, I'll work on it. But yeah, so already there's like conflicting, little confliction
Oh, no. There's
there.
no conflicting. It's what Jerry said.
So because I missed the very beginning of that story. So if that was Schottenheimer, that's already like number one, like shot down one idea.
Right. Look, there's no doubt Jerry runs that ship, right? And I'm sure he held court. And I think I mentioned last year about Jerry's bus, and he holds court on the bus. And everyone sees the Dallas Cowboy bus coming, and just Jerry holding court everywhere he goes. Jerry holds court, right? But they did a similar thing with CeeDee Lamb. He got 25 million converted from salary to signing bonus, and it freed up $20 million on the salary cap. So there is going to be more room than they did have. I'm not sure exactly what the total number will end up being once free agency starts. But look, no team. look, you can't stay pat in just sports, life. You can't stay pat. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. And so to say that we're not going to sign any free agents just doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
It's a little bit what they did last year. They signed a few they signed Kendricks, who's a Bruin, and another UCLA guy, to shore up their middle linebacker spot last year. But they didn't do much beyond that. And look at the season they had. Now, part of that is
Yeah.
Dak hurt. I understand, but you can't stay pat. You got to be out there making moves. You have to be Philadelphia is the model right now. They're always doesn't matter how much they have. They're always looking to reload and re up and regroup and get better.
Yeah.
That's the model that you have to kind of follow.
Yeah, really smart. I don't know. The Bucks were pretty quiet at the combine. There was some movement about Chris Godwin. They agreed something. So I don't know if he's going to hit the free agent market or not. But there's been some talk about Khalil Mack. I'm not super excited about that. I don't think that's what we need. But otherwise, it was pretty quiet from the Bucks.
Yeah, Khalil Mack, he's a name, but he's a solid guy at this point, a solid pro. I don't know if he's quite the difference maker he was 5, 6 years ago.
Well, isn't he? And he's a linebacker. Isn't he a linebacker?
Well, he's an outside linebacker, rush in, kind of hybrid guy, but gets after, you want him getting after your quarterback. And I don't know if he can quite turn the edge like he could, meaning
Yeah.
turn the edge on the offensive tackle to get to the quarterback quite like he could several years ago. So,
Yeah, I just wasn't. I mean, I like the guy. I liked him when he was with Chicago in particular, but that's to me, that's not exactly where we are in need.
yeah.
But some other interesting things then from the week, because you mentioned Joey Bosa, Max Crosby signed that huge
Yeah.
contract. I think that was yesterday or today, but that's,
Years, million, I believe.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. They really wanted him to stay, obviously, and he's another guy, kind of like probably Myles Garrett, who's like, dude, I cannot go through yet another rebuild,
Right.
but I guess he's gonna.
Well, I think,
And then what's your thought on DK Metcalf requesting a trade? That was interesting.
yeah, I think, look, everyone wants that ring, and I don't know what his contract status, because it could be that sometimes his contract status, hey, I want a new deal, or we're not going to give you a new deal. Okay, well then trade me. But more often than not, I think it's guys who look at, hey, how realistic is it for us to get to the Super Bowl in the next year, 2, 3 years? DK Metcalf, just off the top of my head, is probably in year 6, 7, or 8, right? So how many
Yeah,
years
I
have
would.
left versus, where are the Seattle Seahawks in their development? And so you never know exactly why a guy wants a trade, and sometimes even if they do want the trade because they want the opportunity, and hey, maybe we'll sweeten your deal. Will that make you happy? Hey, here's what we do. Here's our strategic plan going forward. Don't listen to outside sources. We think we'll be ready in 2 years. It's not going to take us 5. To make someone happy and want to stay. Again, unless you know the person individually, it's just sometimes difficult to know exactly why they want to get out of somewhere.
Right. I realize we're bouncing around. Did you have more on the combine?
No,
Because
no,
we're
no,
like
no, no, no,
jumping into other stuff.
no,
There's
no, no.
some interesting
Later.
quarterback things.
Mm-hmm.
So Minnesota not franchising Darnold.
Yeah. Well, we kind of talked about that a little bit, right? Where he played himself out of that spot just those last 2, 3 weeks of the season. And they just said, well, hey, if he can revert back so quickly and just be so schizophrenic in his play, then maybe we don't want to take the long-term commitment and the financial commitment that'll sign him.
And then what about so there's these names floating around out there. So Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers, Sam Darnold. Those are like the names that are really floating around. And then of course you have like Jameis Winston and Daniel Jones, like some kind of next tier. But I think the whole Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing is going to be quite interesting. Obviously, Pittsburgh has said they're not keeping both of them. And
Right.
it seems as if they're leaning more toward Justin Fields, which is very interesting considering they basically sat him the whole year. Where do you think Russell's going to end up?
Well, I was thinking for a while, perhaps the Raiders getting back with Pete. They kind of have a good relationship. And if you'll remember a few years ago when that whole kind of Legion of Boom, the Seattle defense, that good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of those guys kind of felt that whole situation blew up because of Pete's relationship with Russell, just kind of favoring Russell in certain situations. And look, everything I see, everything I hear, I like Russell, but everything I hear is that he's a prima donna, right? And nothing like back channel, just what I see in the news, right? He had his own separate office at the stadium when he was in Denver, and
Oh, I didn't know that.
oh yeah, yeah. He had his own office, and so it seems
Oh.
a bit of a prima donna, and I get it. Like if you're not super well grounded, it's easy as an NFL quarterback to kind of get the big head, right? And so
And when
maybe
you're married to Sierra,
right, right, a pop
the
star, right?
glamour, the glam squad, they're very
Yeah,
glamorous, those
exactly.
two.
And I think he's a cornball, which is fine. You can be a cornball and still be a good guy, right? But so I think he's still got a little bit of football. Is he going to be elite? Yeah, those years are probably past him. But he might be able to help a veteran
Yeah,
who has other things in place where they can be successful, and he doesn't have to be the focal point of the offense. Strong running game, good receivers that
yeah,
don't necessarily have to be a wide open to be hit, but can get those contested balls. And in a situation like that, where he's got solid support, then maybe you can make a playoff run. And then once you get in, anything can happen. And so
right.
you expect, because he has had that success, then he's in those situations. It's not new to him to play under that pressure. And then, hey, let's see what happens. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Again, it's going to be a carousel. There's going to be a lot of movement. There's a lot, like you said, a lot of names out there. Um,
Yeah, and that's all next week. Free agency. Woo!
and that's the
Oh,
other.
I know there was something funny I forgot to tell you about in Washington D.C. That's just side note, but so the Lightning won. They beat the Capitals, and I was waiting for my sister and our other friend. They were in the bathroom, and so this guy's walking out going Tampa, and everyone was going Bay because that's like our cheer. So I was doing that. I'll go with the Tampa and the Bay, and then he goes, Washington sucks. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that. That's not nice. And we're in Washington, by the way. But then this guy says, yeah, well, we took care of the Bucks, didn't we? I was like, see, you can only be so cocky
Right,
because then things like that happen. Like, and that you just reminded me of that when you said, like, once you get to the playoffs, anything can happen.
right.
So, yeah, you can only go so far as
Yes.
a visitor in a stadium.
Well, you know what the retort to that is? The retort is, that was a month ago. Turn the page, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was just hoping they weren't going to fight. I'm like, please don't fight. I'm standing right
Right.
here. So free agency is next week. So aside from the quarterback stuff, any big thing you're thinking or seeing or anything you've heard?
Um, no, there's not. Look, free agency is always awesome, especially the first round. Now, obviously, those are when the big names go off the board typically. But I kind of like and like I said in this last week, what Chicago has done. They signed Joe Tooney, but they also made a trade for, oh geez, Jonah. I can't think of his first name, but Jonah, the guard from the LA Rams, who wasn't
Yeah.
a pro but is a Pro Bowler, and so they're really trying to say, hey, we have to take care of this young quarterback, this young asset that we have. We don't want him out here getting beat up because, he did
Yeah.
kind of season. We don't want to stunt his growth. And if we get him protected, well, then we think he can shine and help this franchise finally win like we want to win. And so I'm sure this is just the beginning of it for them. Like, who knows where they're going to. So it'll be interesting. I'll be following them to see what else they do to support their young
Yeah,
quarterback.
they've been making these quiet little moves,
Right.
but good moves.
Yeah, because
Like
signing guys
very
is
smart.
not
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
sexy how you win, right? It's how you. It's not the big diva receiver, but little moves like that are how you build a team and how you win. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Well,
always awesome.
I like free agency. I think it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's again, you get excited, and you're always because you're always looking at, hey, what are the other teams in our division doing, right? And why aren't we making a move? Especially now, again, if Jerry sticks to his guns, the Cowboy fans for 2 years in a row will be like, what are we doing? Why are we not making any moves? Why are we not signing this? But you have to remember there's always that secondary wave that starts in June because there'll be another big round of cuts in June after OTAs start, after mini camps, and there'll be another round. So we'll see big names again. There'll be more big names just where for cap reasons, for, hey, we got a young guy pushing this guy. We think you know what? Let's go with the young guy. We can save some money. We'll be fine plugging him in. He'll have room to grow, and so there'll be another round of free agent signings come June, leading into the training camp. So, yeah, this is the fun part of the off season. And again, like I said, the superpower is just that it's year round. There's always news breaking, and it's the Ian Rappaport's and who else is a big NFL power broker? Well, and it's funny,
It's Shefty. What?
Jeff,
Adam Schefter.
Adam Schefter, right? Like, so those guys, and I don't know how they do it. They must just be on their phone like 24/7, just getting
And
news.
the woman from the New York Times, Diane.
Oh, Rossini, Diana Rossini.
Yeah, she's got her ear to the ground. She gets a lot of scoop.
Yeah, absolutely. And because nowadays, especially on the internet side of things, the whole thing is about breaking news, right? Breaking stories.
Yeah,
And you don't have a ton of time before everyone has it, right? And so and
true.
so their real business is building relationships and being trusted and saying, hey, I'll tell you this, you can't use this, but you can use that, right? And so it's building those relationships over years where people feel comfortable telling you things and trust that if I tell you this, you won't use it if I say you can't use it, right?
Well, and it's so funny. Like, I think Adam Schefter is probably the number one. I mean, I don't, maybe, but you'll see him, like, he'll be on Good Morning Football, and all of a sudden his phone goes off, and he's like,
Right.
and then they're all like, Shefty, what's going on? He's like, well, I'll let you know in just but he's like, apparently, never sleeps. Like, the
Yeah.
phone is always there and always going off. But I am dying to find out what Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz were fighting about. I must find out. I'm going to investigate.
Here's the interesting thing. I'm guessing it's not necessarily job related just because they know all eyes are on them at the combine. They know every executive there, all the owners are there, and they don't want to look bad in front of those people. So whatever sparked them to have that spat in front of people, I'm guessing maybe is a little bit more personal. Who knows?
Wrong drink. Jordan took his drink at Starbucks. Oh my gosh. That's another thing in DC. Let me just tell you really quick. So I was really sleepy. And you know how in Italy I got into espresso? Like that was, I'm like, oh, espresso. Ooh, it's good. So we were at this Mediterranean restaurant in between the Lightning game and the Georgetown game. And I was a little sleepy and I had some wine at lunch. So I'm like, okay, I got to have something. But then I read you can't drink espresso after 11 a.m. because the Italians will poo-poo you. And again, why I care? I'm back in the States, so I should have just had the espresso. But no, I saw Turkish coffee. I'm like, oh, that's probably like espresso. So I ordered a sweet Turkish coffee. And mind you, I'm not a sweet person.
Okay.
Vaughn, it was like drinking sludge.
Oh,
Sludge, I tell you. And by the way, apparently you're not supposed to drink the sludgy part, but I thought you were just supposed to finish it.
right.
So I'm like drinking this sludge and I'm like, is this good? This isn't good. And then my mouth, I had like grounds in my mouth. I'm like,
Oh, no.
and then the waiter comes back and he goes, oh, how did you like it? I go, was I supposed to drink this part? He goes, he's like,
No.
so yeah, Turkish coffee, not my thing.
Not so much. Okay.
So I digress.
You'll know for next time.
Yes, no Turkish coffee. And if I want an espresso at 4:30 p.m., I'm having it.
Have it. Yes. Treat yourself.
So I can stay up and watch the Hoyas lose. God love them. But they were playing Marquette. And my nephew, who is in charge of all statistics and such for the Georgetown Hoya basketball team, he told me they were going to lose. He's like, we're not winning this. So I'm like, okay. But, you can always hope.
It's not the way it's
That's right. All right. Well, I guess we're at time. So that was some good info. We got to go to the combine. Maybe next year we just need to show up. We'll just show up.
Yeah, and you know what? Because I know I know it was back in Indy this year, but I know was it last year or
I
the
don't
year?
know where it is next year.
But and then, look, have always felt that the West Coast guys are at a disadvantage when it's in Indy, just because when they're working out, it's like 5 a.m. our time, right? So
It's going to be in Indianapolis again.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay. Well, we'll go. Let's go.
Okay.
Ashton, we're going to Indianapolis next February. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next week we will have lots more to discuss, probably some quarterback movement, lots of stuff happening. So that's exciting.
Yes, definitely.
Yep.
Looking forward to it.
The free agency frenzy is on its way.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for the good info. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we will reconvene next week. Free agency.
Sounds good. See you then.
All right.
All right.
Peace,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.